Welcome everyone. In this video we're going to factor a monomial. So in the last video you learned how to factor a number using what's called a prime factorization, and now we're going to generalize that to any monomial. And so our objective is of course to factor. If you'll remember, factor just means turn to a multiplication problem. So all we want to do is take some expression, in this case a monomial, and turn it into a multiplication problem. That's it. That's our goal. And so let's use this example right here, 42m squared into the fourth, to talk about what's going to go on as far as where we go from here. So we already know how to turn 42 into a multiplication problem. We just get the prime factorization of 42. So really, this whole question boils down to, how do I take m squared into the fourth and turn that into a multiplication problem that is as simple as possible? So here we go. Here's what we do. If we're going to factor a monomial, we're looking for the numbers and variables now. That's the added thing to this. They'll multiply together to give you that number. And in this case, let's do the part that we know how to do. 42, we would start by trying to divide that by 2. That's going to give us 21. This should look very familiar from the prime factorization video, by the way. And now we're at 21. We try 2, but that doesn't work. That gives us 10.5. So we try the next prime number, which is 3. 3 divided by 21 is 7. So there we go. We got that part. 42 is 2 times 3 times 7. Now, the question becomes, what do we do about the m squared in the end of the fourth? Well, we can talk about what m squared means. If I've got that exponent of 2, that means m times m. And since we don't know what m is, that's broken down. That's as far as it goes. So there's that. Into the fourth. That means n multiplied by itself n times, and I don't know what n is, so I can't break it down any further, so that's it. And so it turns out that all I have to do, if I have variables added onto this, is to just rewrite all the variables without using any exponents. So I have to know that m squared means m times m, and this has two benefits. A, we learn how to factor, and B, it forces us to truly understand what those exponents mean, which is good. So here we go. Anytime you're factoring a monomial, find the prime factorization of the coefficient. Coefficient will just be a number. We know how to do that. We've already looked at that and practiced it. Then rewrite any variables with exponents, like we saw just a second ago, as repeated multiplication. So we're going to look at a couple of examples real quick. Just as before, I'll have my example, and then you'll have your example, and we'll work through it together. So here's the first thing I want us to do. Let's just write it down. 24p squared is my example, and I'm going to write equals in anticipation of writing all my factors right here. So this is where my answer is going to be. So go ahead and do that for your example. Good. Now let's take the coefficient. In my case, that's going to be 24. And let's find the prime factorization. So in my case, I start with 2. 24 divided by 2 is 12. I try 2 again. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Well, I'm just going to keep going with these 2's until it stops working. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 3 is prime, so I know that's it. So now I'm going to write down the factors from my coefficient. Well, let's have you do that for yours. Very good. Now I'm going to look at the variable p squared. Well, that means I'm multiplying p times itself twice. So I write that down here, and there it is. I've factored my monomial. So let's have you do the same for your example. Very good. Now let's see if they match up. So here is yours, worked out very quickly. And so you can see if you've done that correctly. Let's look at another example that's slightly more complicated. Now we have more variables, and our coefficient is negative. So let's start by writing the monomial down in anticipation of our factors. Let's go ahead and have you do that as well. Very good. Now I'm going to take my coefficient and I'm going to factor it. Remembering that when this is negative, the first thing I pull out is a -1 to change it to a positive, and then I start going through with all my primes. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I'll try 2 again until it stops working, or I get to a prime number, which is 2. So my factors there will be 1 times 2 times 2. Let's go ahead and have you do the prime factorization of your coefficient. Very good. And now let's look at the variables and let's look at each one individually. So in my case, m just has an exponent of 1, nothing written there, and so there's no factoring to be done. It just stays m, nice and easy. N squared means n times n. So when I write this, I write my m, my n, and my other n, and now I've got it. So let's have you do yours. And there we can see what it should be. I apologize for having to go down to another line, but hey, these are kind of long, so that can happen. All right, let's check out one final example now, because this will be a situation that you'll come across that is, I don't want to call it super unique, but it's at least something you need to have seen once. So we start by writing it down. Go ahead and write yours down. Good. And now we're going to get the prime factorization of the coefficient. Hey, wait a minute. What do you know about 13? Think about your list of prime numbers. 13 is prime. The only thing we can do with this is 1 and 13, so guess what? There's no way to factor that prime or that coefficient. It is prime, so I just write 13. So take a look at yours. I bet you can't guess what's going to happen. All right, now that you've got that part written down, let's look at our variables. R to the 4th and t. R to the 4th is r times r times r times r, and then t is, of course, just t, nothing to do there. And so I would write it as such, and there is the factorization of that monomial. So now I want you to go ahead and finish yours, and let's take a look at the correct answer. And there you go, you've now factored this. And that's it, that's all there is to these. The only thing we've added is rewriting those variables without using exponents, so just as multiplication problems. And as you can see, that kind of naturally factors it. Remember, it's like taking that Lego and breaking it up into pieces. All right, good luck, my friends.